on in. We don't want to be late for the kids' Halloween carnival.
Oh, yes, we do.
If you grew up in the era of appointment TV, you remember the feeling. Tuesday night wasn't just a day of the week. It was a plan. You'd finish dinner a little faster. You'd do your homework a little earlier. You'd park yourself on the couch, because ABC had this weird superpower where a Tuesday could feel like a mini holiday. And what's wild is that it wasn't built around one legendary show. It was built around a promise. If you like this, don't touch that dial, because the next thing is going to hit too. That's what a real comedy block does. It doesn't just win a time slot. It teaches an audience a habit. ABC's Tuesday comedy block had two lives. First, the classic 70s run, where a handful of sitcoms didn't just get popular, they became a weekly conveyor belt of laughs. Then later, a 90s reboot, when ABC tried to bottle that magic again with a new lineup and a new style of sitcom. But here's the real story. ABC didn't lose Tuesday because one show got canceled. They lost it because the mechanism that made the block work, momentum, consistency, and trust, started to break down. The block was a chain. When one link got weak, the whole thing started to wobble. So this is the rise and fall of ABC's Tuesday comedy block. How it became a pop culture routine, why it felt unstoppable, and how, even with huge hits, Tuesday eventually stopped being ABC night and turned back into just Tuesday. The setup: ABC learns you don't need one hit, you need a night. To understand how ABC pulled this off, you have to rewind to a time when channel surfing wasn't really a thing the way it is now. You had fewer choices, and networks fought like crazy for something more valuable than a single hit show. They fought for a night. Because if a network could claim a night, it wasn't just winning ratings for 30 minutes. It was winning your living room for hours. It meant advertisers got consistency. It meant viewers built routines. It meant a network could say, "This is where you come for comedy," and people would actually believe it. ABC, especially in the mid-70s, needed a signature. CBS was the stable giant. NBC had its own pillars. ABC's path wasn't to out-prestige everyone overnight. Their path was to out-schedule them. Build a run so comfortable and reliable that viewers stopped making decisions. And that's the key. A great comedy block reduces choice. You don't sit there debating what to watch next. You just let it roll. The shows don't feel like separate products. They feel like one long hangout. So ABC starts thinking like a domino designer. What's the anchor? What's the follow-up? What's the don't leave yet show? What's the closer? When it works, the lineup becomes a machine. But first, you need the spark. One show, strong enough to pull the audience in and hold the door open for everything behind it. The spark. Happy Days turns Tuesday into a habit. Enter the kind of show that doesn't just get popular, it becomes a comfort object. Happy Days hits at exactly the right time with exactly the right energy. Upbeat, familiar, and easy to drop into. You didn't need to catch every episode to feel like you were part of the world. You could jump in, laugh, and feel like you'd been there the whole time. That accessibility matters more than people realize. For a block to work, the anchor can't feel precious. It can't demand homework. It has to be welcoming. Happy Days was that kind of welcoming. It created a vibe that said, "Come hang out for a while." And once ABC had that anchor, they could start doing something networks love, using one hit to introduce another. This is where the magic of scheduling kicks in. If you've already got millions of people showing up at a certain time every Tuesday, the smartest move isn't to treat that as a win. The smartest move is to treat it like a funnel. You place another show right after it that shares the same energy temperature, similar humor, similar warmth, similar audience. The viewer doesn't feel like they're changing genres. They feel like they're staying at the same party, just moving from one room to the next. And once people start watching two shows in a row, the habit deepens. Now, Tuesday isn't that one show. Tuesday is my night. ABC didn't just have a hit. They had the start of a routine, and routines are the hardest thing to steal. The power-up, Laverne and Shirley, makes the night a 1-2 punch. This is where ABC levels up from "we have a hit" to "we're building a dynasty." Because the moment you pair an anchor with a second powerhouse, you stop being a lineup and start being a block. Laverne and Shirley wasn't just a strong companion show. It became a phenomenon in its own right. And the pairing did something sneaky. It made the night feel bigger than either show alone. Viewers weren't arriving for one series and tolerating the next. They were arriving for an experience they trusted. There's an old network dream. You want your viewers to feel like they've entered a safe zone. A place where the jokes are going to land, where the tone won't suddenly shift into something awkward, and where the characters are going to feel like familiar company. That's what ABC started offering on Tuesdays. And once you have a 1-2 punch, you can start stacking the rest of the lineup with intent. The second show doesn't just keep people around, it protects the time slot behind it. It's like building a wall. Anyone trying to compete against you now has to beat 2 big shows in a row, not one. This is also where the psychology changes. When a viewer watches 2 shows back to back, leaving starts to feel like breaking the spell. The TV is already on. You're already laughing. You're already settled. Changing the channel becomes effort. So ABC wasn't just winning Tuesday in ratings. They were winning Tuesday in behavior. And when a network controls behavior, they can do something truly powerful. They can take risks behind their hits, launch new ideas, and build the kind of schedule that feels unstoppable. The dynasty forms, Three's Company and the conveyor belt effect. Now picture the full machine humming, a big anchor, a massive follow-up, and then another crowd pleaser that keeps the rhythm going. That's where Three's Company comes in and turns the Tuesday block into something that feels like it can't miss. Because this is the sweet spot of the classic network era. Sitcoms that were broad enough to pull in huge audiences, but distinct enough that the night didn't feel repetitive. You'd get warmth, you'd get charm, you'd get a different style of comedy, and you'd get it in a tight, reliable order. This is also when Tuesday stops being a lineup and becomes a train. The first show gets you on board. The second show locks you in. The third show makes it feel like getting off early would be weird. And then ABC could play with that last slot. Sometimes going a little edgier, sometimes trying something bold, sometimes using it as a launch pad. And the key concept here is the conveyor belt effect. Hits don't just succeed, they carry other shows. A new sitcom doesn't have to fight for attention in a vacuum. It gets introduced to millions of people who are already sitting there, already laughing, already in the mood. That's why comedy blocks are so legendary when they work. They can create stars. They can create cultural catchphrases. They can turn, "I've never heard of this show," into, "I guess I watch this every week now." But every dynasty has a hidden weakness. The stronger the machine gets, the more it depends on its core gears. And ABC's Tuesday machine, no matter how unstoppable it looked, was still built on humans, writers, actors, and viewers whose tastes could change. The minute the gears start slipping, the conveyor belt doesn't just slow down, it starts tossing shows off the track. Peak Tuesday, when ABC adds cool to the comfort. At its peak, ABC's Tuesday wasn't just funny, it felt complete, like the network had figured out how to build an entire evening that could serve different moods without losing the thread. This is the moment where the night evolves beyond 3 sitcoms in a row. ABC starts showing off. They've got the family-friendly warmth that gets everyone in the room. They've got the louder, more kinetic comedy that keeps the energy up. And then they can cap the night with something that makes you feel like you're watching a bigger kind of TV. Slicker, sharper, maybe even a little more adult. And that balance matters, because a night that only does one thing can get stale. But a night that shifts gears strategically can keep people from drifting. You laugh with the family at 8. You get something punchier at 8:30. By 9, the mood has matured. Still entertaining, but in a way that feels like it's growing with you. This is how networks build loyalty across age groups. Parents enjoy the earlier sitcoms. Older siblings stick around for the later stuff. Teenagers who would roll their eyes at the wholesome half hour might still hang around because something cooler is coming. Tuesday becomes a shared space. That's the power of owning a night. It isn't just about one demographic. It's about making the home want to stay with you. But a peak can be dangerous. Because once a block is this strong, people start assuming it's permanent. Viewers assume it will always be there. Executives assume the brand is bulletproof. And the minute you start believing your own myth, you stop protecting the fragile thing that built it. Consistency. The first cracks. When the chain starts to loosen. Here's the part that's almost never dramatic in the moment, until you look back and realize it was the beginning of the end. A comedy block doesn't collapse because audiences suddenly hate comedy. It collapses because the chain stops feeling unbreakable, and that can happen in a bunch of small ways. A show runs long and starts to repeat its own rhythms. Key cast members move on, writers change, the tone shifts, or the network gets tempted to refresh things too aggressively and loses the vibe that made the night feel safe. With a block like ABC's Tuesday, the danger wasn't that one show might dip a little. The danger was that even a slight dip changes behavior. If the anchor doesn't feel like required viewing anymore, some people won't arrive on time. If the 8:30 show isn't quite as strong, some people start checking what else is on. If the 9:00 slot becomes unpredictable, the whole night starts feeling less like a hangout and more like a gamble. And once it feels like a gamble, you've already lost the magic. The whole point of a block is that you don't want viewers to think. You want them to stay. There's also the generational issue. The audience that loved the block in the mid-70s grows older. Their routines change. Their tastes evolve. New viewers come in with different expectations. And suddenly, the night that once felt timeless starts feeling like it belongs to a specific era. The cracks are subtle, but they're deadly. The block stops being a ritual and becomes something you watch when nothing else is on. That's the moment you go from owning Tuesday to merely airing shows on Tuesday. And the difference between those two is everything. The fall, when Tuesday stops being a brand. Once the Tuesday habit weakens, networks enter a kind of panic mode that looks logical on paper, but often makes things worse. Experimentation. Because when you're no longer dominating, the instinct is to reshuffle, to try new pairings, to swap time slots, to plug holes with whatever you've got. The problem is that blocks don't love change. Blocks love familiarity. And the more the schedule becomes a revolving door, the less viewers trust it. This is where owning a night slips away. The night stops feeling like an identity and starts feeling like a grid. One week you know what you're getting. The next week, it's something else. And even if the new show is fine, the viewer's relationship with the night has already shifted. They're no longer committed. They're sampling. Meanwhile, competition gets smarter. Other networks study what worked. They counter-program. They offer something different that steals a piece of the audience. And once the audience learns, I don't have to stay here, staying becomes optional. This is also where nostalgia plays tricks on us. In memory, the dynasty feels like it lasted forever. In reality, the block relied on a specific combination of timing, talent, and cultural mood. Those ingredients don't repeat easily, and once they're gone, you can't just schedule your way back to domination. So the original Tuesday comedy empire fades. Not in one big collapse, but in a slow evaporation of certainty. But ABC wasn't done chasing that feeling. Because when you've tasted what it's like to own a night, you spend the rest of your life trying to get it back. And in the 90s, ABC takes another swing, with a whole new kind of sitcom energy. The 90s second act, rebuilding Tuesday with new anchors. The 90s version of ABC Tuesday is fascinating because it's both a comeback and a remix. ABC once again builds around big, reliable stars, shows that don't just get watched, but become part of how people talk about TV. The network understands the old rule. You can't build a block out of pretty good. You build a block out of gravity. You need shows that pull people in and hold them there. So ABC tries to recreate the chain, get viewers in early, keep them laughing through the middle, then hand them off to something that feels like a bigger event later in the night. It's a modern version of the same philosophy. Turn Tuesday into a destination. And for a while, it works. You can feel ABC reaching for that old sense of this is our night. The tone is different from the 70s, of course. More grown up, more sarcastic, more about family chaos and workplace frustrations than teenage nostalgia. But the strategy is the same. Pair the hits, protect the slots, and let the momentum do the work. What's especially clever is that the block isn't isolated. ABC uses the comedy stack to feed into a later hour show that gives the whole night an aura of importance. It's not just sitcom night, it's ABC Tuesday. But the 90s landscape is already more complicated than the 70s. Viewers have more options, more channels, more reasons to drift, and the culture moves faster. So even when ABC gets the ingredients right, they're cooking in a kitchen that's harder to control. Which means the 90s Tuesday block has a built-in fragility. It depends even more on its anchors staying strong. And when those anchors start to move, or end, the block doesn't just wobble. It starts to unravel quickly. The final slide. When the block becomes a revolving door again. Here's the harsh truth about comedy blocks. They're brutally dependent on continuity. When one major anchor ends, you don't just lose a show. You lose the thing that delivers viewers to everything around it. And once the delivery system breaks, you're suddenly asking your other shows to do something they were never designed to do. Survive without the lead-in oxygen. In the 90s, ABC runs into the same problem it faced after the earlier dynasty. Big shows eventually age out, conclude, or shift in ways that change the chemistry of the night. And the network has to fill those holes. The replacement shows might be solid, even clever, but they don't automatically inherit the ritual. So Tuesday starts to feel inconsistent again. Not bad, necessarily, just less inevitable. And once Tuesday is no longer inevitable, the audience stops giving ABC the benefit of the doubt. They don't show up automatically. They wait to hear if something is good. They check what else is on. They record it. They watch later. The habit breaks. This is also where the entire concept of a block starts losing power in general. The world is shifting. People have more entertainment choices. They're less willing to organize life around a network night. A block can still exist, but it has to fight harder for loyalty. And loyalty is the one thing blocks used to get for free. So ABC's Tuesday comedy brand doesn't die in a dramatic explosion. It fades into something more ordinary. A night with shows, not a night with an identity. And that's the real fall. Not the cancellation of one sitcom, but the end of the idea that Tuesday belonged to ABC. Conclusion: the legacy of owning a night. When you look back at ABC's Tuesday comedy block, the most impressive thing isn't any single show, even though the shows were huge. The most impressive thing is that ABC proved a network could turn a weekday into a cultural routine. That's a different kind of success. Hits are common. Owning a night is rare, because owning a night means you've done something psychological. You've convinced millions of people to stop thinking and start trusting. You've made your network feel like the default choice, the safe choice, the "this is what we do now" choice. And once that trust is built, it becomes an engine. It launches new series. It creates momentum. It makes the entire schedule feel stronger than the sum of its parts. But ABC's Tuesday Story also shows why it's so hard to keep. A block is a chain, and chains don't just need strong links, they need stable links. The minute the night becomes too changeable, the habit breaks. The minute viewers start sampling, the night loses its identity. The minute the anchor loses gravity, everything around it starts floating away. And maybe that's why these old network blocks feel so nostalgic. It's not just the jokes, it's the structure of life around them. The feeling that TV was communal, predictable, and shared. Like the whole country was lining up for the same hangout. So the rise and fall of ABC's Tuesday comedy block isn't just a story about ratings. It's a story about how rituals are built, and how, once they're broken, they're almost impossible to rebuild. If you want, we can do the next Night Autopsy on another iconic block, NBC's must-see TV, Fox's weird experimental eras, or even the exact moment TGIF started to wobble.